Welcome to Research and Technology TEC
4-3.
Very good, very good. 4-3. We are starting on April 1st today, and this marks the start of the last third of the semester. So we moved 2/3 of the semester, and now we have only 1/3 to go. If you enjoyed the first two parts, you will enjoy the rest double time. If you didn't enjoy the first two, I hope you enjoy the third. If you are late, it is time to catch up today. Forget about the April Fool and all this stuff, but we will start from today catching up and getting to the end of our semester. It's my pleasure to have a guest speaker today. I don't call her guest because she is a homeowner. She is a host, actually. And her name happened to be Rich, Cindy Rich. And we have Cynthia here, but he is Cindy. And I'll not introduce her much. I'll leave that for her and for you if you want to ask her about anything. Get introduced to each other. Our class here is Research and Technology. And I found out that Cindy is, or Dr. Rich is a rich person, has lots of information, and she is directly connected to the Library of Congress. So you can't ask for better. I mean, we are so lucky to have her talk about it. And I'll ask her, without stealing her thunder, tell us about the tree that's not found anywhere else other than Eastern. We have a very rare type of tree.
Oh no, it's the plant.
Or plant. We have a plant that you can find
Rarely.
you can find it rare, but we have it here. And it was my first time to know that when I listened to her. So without much ado, would you please join me in welcoming Dr. Cindy Rich.
Thank you. And you know, luckily I'm rich in resources because I'm not rich otherwise. So that was what when I taught high school, that's what they asked. Are you rich? And I'm like, no, sorry, doesn't work that way. But I'm coming at you from a slightly different perspective. And I come from the world of K-12 teaching. So you are all students, but I'm guessing that none of you have probably ever taught in a K-12 classroom. So, what I typically do, well actually I'll start with a little background about myself. I have been working with the Library of Congress since January of 2004. And it is a federal grant program that the Library of Congress digitized over 30 million items and put them on their website. So they've digitized maps, photos, documents, motion pictures, audio, you name it, in digital format. And they're all available for download for anybody that needs to or wants to use them on the Library of Congress website. They digitized all of these items and then they realized that they really weren't getting into the hands of people like they hoped. So they thought, what is the best way to let people know about these resources? And the first thing they thought of were teachers in schools. And so if we take this to teachers in classrooms, they'll share it with their students. Hopefully their students will share it with their parents, and we can get these materials out there. The best part is they're free. So for anybody that's a teacher, that's a very good thing. And a student, that's a good thing. But they're also available. What's cool is they're downloadable. So the good thing about that is if you're going to be somewhere and you don't have internet access for whatever reason, something goes wrong or you just can't log in, these things, you can download them, have them ready, and then use them. Which is nice with students because if you have a class full of 6th graders, sometimes you don't want them all out on the internet searching at the same time for things, and it's easier just to have them all right there in folders on the desktop and accessible like that. There is also, I'm going to show you some of the things, a huge collection of newspapers that have been digitized and all types of things, but it can be overwhelming. So I'm going to show you some things on the Library of Congress website, specifically science and technology related, but just a new place for you to go to look while you do your research. A new source that none of your professors have maybe seen before. A newspaper article from somewhere that's never been used as a source before. So just a unique perspective that you can bring by by using these items instead of just the same old that everybody uses for their research. So we're going to go into that. Now my background is actually teaching language arts. I taught English and reading in middle school and high school. And so I'm not a history professor by any means. The only way I learned the difference between World War I and World War II when we were watching movies, my husband finally said, the World War I helmets are flat. And I'm like, okay, now I know. And so I struggle with history, and I'm the worst at geography. I went to a little bitty Catholic school in Southern Illinois, and I always say we had religion instead of geography. But my brother knows it, so that's why. But so you don't have to be a historian to use this site. That's a big mistake that people make. They think it's only for historical topics and things like that, but it's not. There are great resources. Library of Congress is Congress's library. So anything that's going to come before Congress, any potential legislation, anything like that, that they are going to research, the researchers at the Library of Congress have assembled resources and collected those, and that is what you're going to find on the Library of Congress website. We all know that that's not just what we have in our history books. It covers every aspect of our lives. So I'm going to kind of introduce some of those things to you. I have a couple of handouts for you. 2 are specific to science and technology, and then 1, because they tweaked the site, it's now outdated, so you're going to get it, but I wanted to share it with you because this is something I give high school students researching the Library of Congress website.
Is the Library of Congress the largest in the world, really?
I've never tested that theory, but I believe it is, but I don't know. The other component, the Copyright Office for the United States, is in the Library of Congress. So everything goes through it in one form or another because of that. So it gives it unique access as well. Now many of the items, however, that have been digitized, as we all know, if somebody owns something, they may not want everybody to have access for free. So the majority of the items are historical, they're older, they're copyright free. So when you have a motion picture, an Edison motion picture from 1903 or something like that, I don't know if that date's right or not, so there you go. First mistake in history, probably, right there. But these old motion pictures and things, they're not copyright protected. And some of the newer history, like if you're looking for something for Martin Luther King Jr. or John F. Kennedy, there are limited items on those because the families still own the rights to all of those things. So you may not be able to access the photos because somebody still owns those and makes royalties or whatever off them and controls them. So anything that's in the Library of Congress is open access, but there is information on there about who owns or who donated, all of that. So can I get you to help me pass this thing down?
I know, that's what I was thinking.
That's what I can't move that. I'll stick them so on the other side of the house. This first is just a little pamphlet. If any of you do graphic, I paper cutted myself today, so excuse the Band-Aid. This is just a quick start. Literally shows the home page and some of the key points that you might want to use. So it's just an easy little reference brochure. And this next one has some of the pages that we're going to look at. So if you have your computer, which I assume all of you do, or if not, you can just follow along with me up front. We're going to go to the website, and it is www.loc.gov. LOC, Library of Congress, gov.gov. Now, how many of you have ever been to this website before? 1, 2, couple, all right, 3, a handful of you. It's getting more and more user-friendly all the time. When I first started this with the program, historians were controlling it, and historians were very tight-fisted with their resources. They didn't feel everything should be made accessible. Another thing that they did was a lot of the items put on, a big part of what I do with my programming with students, it's all about primary sources. Primary sources versus secondary sources. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Primary source is something that is created or part of something as it happens. A secondary source is a story that occurs later, a secondhand version of it. So these are primary sources. These are things that are created at the time when an event happened. Now, the weird thing is, we have this debate even in DC. Sometimes a primary source is a secondary source, and a secondary source is a primary source, and all of that. But it all depends on what you're studying. If we look at a painting of the first Thanksgiving that was created 100 years later, it has images of the people they believe were involved, but it's a secondhand source because it wasn't created at the time by somebody that was there. However, if you're studying a particular art technique at the time that it was created, then in that respect, it's a primary source. So this is, I don't even know if there's a right answer all the time for this because we constantly debate this. And so it's an interesting way to think about these things because one of the cool things about it is you get the primary source typically without bias from a cataloger or someone else that you might get in a textbook. It's just the item as is. You have the bias of the creator, but nobody else. There's no interpretation. And so this is something we want to give students in schools now, middle school, high school, even elementary students. If we give them a photograph, they have the intellectual ability to figure out what that photograph is, to draw on previous experiences and understand the photo instead of just looking at what somebody tells them that photo is underneath. Same thing with the news or anything they find online. It's a skill they're going to use their entire life to trust their own instincts and be able to study and figure out what something is on their own. So first I'm going to give you just an overview of this website. Shrink it down a little bit here. All right. The home page is broken into 3 columns right now. This is kind of a current event thing section that they have for what's going on, or sometimes exhibits or special events. My Band-Aids make it hard to click. If I click on this, Carl Sagan, there's a collection. All right. If I click on this, Titan Master Book 1, immediately, these are JPEGs, GIFs, and TIFFs. So right-click, Save As. Right-click, Save As. Any of these items are available that way.
This is the original handwriting.
This is his original handwriting. His notes. With the Wright brothers, Alexander Graham Bell, George Washington, and all the the historic figures. You have all of these items that are in there. And you can look through these notes. Print them out. If you're using them to present, put them in a smartboard, put them in a PowerPoint presentation, whatever you want to use. But it's amazing we can make them large enough to actually see them. So instead of printing it out on a sheet of paper and trying to figure out what it is, you can crop just a piece that you want. Has a couple of different, these are some of his home movies from his childhood. I've not looked at this yet. But one of the things, if they have a motion picture or audio, it's not cleaned up. It's not tidied up. You're going to have the pops in the audio, the cracks, the things like that because it's in its original state. It hasn't been edited or doctored in any way. Alright. That's kind of slow, so I'm not going to download that one. But the Seth MacFarlane collection of the Carl, that's interesting. I assume that's the Family Guy and all that Seth MacFarlane. Anyway, so that's an example of one of the collections. And so over here they highlight special events. So we open March 27th. And it just tells about the exhibit. It doesn't look like there's a digital exhibit yet for that one. So up there, that's kind of what they want to advertise, what they want to promote right now. And then on the left, just some other things that they want to showcase. This is what, if you walk into Library of Congress, and you can just walk in and check it out. It's free. But these are the exhibits that are there right now. So these maps are hanging right now. So, when I was talking about research that you're doing, these are maps. Right-click, Save As. You can blow them up, you can shrink them down, whatever you want to do, but they're in that digital format. These are resources you can use. A lot of people use just whatever they find on Google, the obvious things. So kind of go outside the box, find something different, and this is where you can do that. The National Archives has the big 100, the 100 milestone documents of American history. So if you want the big things, go to National Archives. Library of Congress, I kind of describe it as when you go to your grandmother's house and she has Rubbermaid tubs with a bunch of pictures and newspapers and things, and you're not exactly sure who they are or what they are, but they're there, or they might be grouped by, these are all Aunt so-and-so or something like that. That's what the Library of Congress is. The Library of Congress has things like one of George Washington's shopping lists, or a check that Abraham Lincoln wrote to his wife for $5. Every day-to-day life type items, as well as the big things. So, but it gives you a really good look at a day in the life of somebody at a particular time. All right, so on this left side we have the exhibits. On the right, congress.gov. Any of you do anything with current events, or are you looking into the legislation? This is where you can research legislation. It'll tell you every step of the process, any changes made within the process of the legislation, who's made or proposed any changes, and at what stage it is, whether it's gotten through the House, through the Senate, who's on the committees, who's doing the revisions. Every little piece of that is available at congress.gov. This is the clearinghouse for legislative information by the United States government. So if you want to see what's there, but it's kind of cool because you can put in something like, I could look up, acid rain. I have no idea why that popped in my head, but I could put in acid rain and it would show me legislation for several years that's happened. I could look up, if I look up just, education, I can see what's there. If I look up aviation, I can see any legislation that's had to do with aviation. In addition, you can look by legislator. You can look in and see everything that Senator Durbin has had a hand on in this Congress. So this is a great site for legislative information. All right, copyright, pretty self-explanatory. That's the Copyright Office for the United States government. All right. The next part I want to show you is these are the collection highlights. One of the coolest things about the Library of Congress website is that it's multimedia. So it's different ways. This is very powerful when we're teaching kids because some kids are auditory, some kids are visual, some kids are tactile. You've got all these different things that you want to pull in. You want to give them information in as many different formats as you can. So, for example, I might go into performing arts and find music about an event. Because we all know that young, especially in middle school, high school, have certain songs they really, really like. And if you talk to them and say, why do you like that song? It's not just that Katy Perry moves you emotionally, but why do you like that song? And they tell you why they like the lyrics of that song, why it speaks to them. And so as they're describing that, we can pull up, and I'm going to go down here to Patriotic Melody Collection. And what Yankee Doodle. And it's going to give me sheet music, sound recordings, song sheets, and more. But I could take one of these song sheets. I can do a PDF for printing, or I can display just the text. But I can blow it up here. Alright. First of all, how many of you knew that Yankee Doodle had like 13 courses, or verses? I didn't know that until I started this. But you can look at a piece of music from a time period or a different place or time and talk about how that music represents that event. Why did that matter? We can look at something like, there's Don't Bite the Hand That Feeds You, that talks about immigration in the early 1900s and how people felt about it. And to look at that song and really analyze those lyrics and understand how people felt about that topic at that time. So when you're researching, you're going to talk about a historical event, but you can add a lot more punch to it by showing this is how people on one side of the country felt about it. This is how people in this country felt about it. This is how, this family in rural Illinois felt about it. So you find all these different perspectives on what you're researching. It adds a whole new depth to the topic. It makes it more personal. But one of the things that with this, it's so cool. Okay, this was the music sheet. This is sheet music. Again, PDF. I can just print this out and you can play it on your piano if you wanted to. Or, the sound recordings. This is an 1898 sound recording. So, MP3 format, right-click, save it, listen to it while you're running. Not sure that would what it would do at your pace or to your pace, but so you have this MP3 format. You have speeches and presentations that have been given that you can download the audio, then put it into any program that you like to use. Crop out the part you want, pull in that audio. Give your presentations a whole new punch with audio from somebody else. So there are all these different formats, all right? And there's cool stuff in this Performing Arts Encyclopedia. One of the things, if you ever get a chance to just play, just get on this site and do a search for anything personal. Just right here at the top, type in anything that interests you. I want to hit Ellis Island. And a few months ago, my husband and I decided to get out of town for a couple of days, and we actually got to go to Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty. We went for our 15th wedding anniversary 10 years ago, and it was after 9/11, so it was closed. So we were excited because we got to go this time. We got to actually see it and go inside and the whole thing, which was awesome. But when I do a search for Ellis Island, it tells me that's 1,344 matches. All right, as I look, gives me these little thumbnails that you see in the description. I can go to gallery, and actually that's what this handout is. This is the one I give to high school students, but I'm going to give it to you because it's outdated and I don't have anything else to do with it. All right. But this is just a starter handout for searching on the Library of Congress. It has the front page, and then going through these things I'm going to tell you about right now. And then the last page is a research kickoff point for kids. Basically, it's just the topic, people associated or impacted by my topic, events that are relative, led to, or resulted from my topic. all of these things, because I will have a student come to me and say, yeah, I'm going to research the Civil War. Like, what part of the Civil War? Well, the South. It's like, no, we need to get a little more specific in that. So this is something to help students kind of zero in on their research a little bit to focus, because otherwise, I once actually had a high school teacher say, I just want to be able to go in and find everything there is on the Revolutionary War. You're not going to find that here. If you want that, go someplace and buy a book on how to teach the Revolutionary War. It's not in here. But this is a place where students are supposed to look and discover what they don't know. As they start looking at it, as I start looking into some of these things, I realize I didn't even know about that. And start looking in a new direction and get that whole inquiry process, get that fire burning in their bellies to want to learn something that interests them personally. Then they'll care. Otherwise, they're doing it because they have to and that's it. Give them a little bit of freedom, then they'll find something that piques their own interest, and that's huge. Everything's easier when it's fun. It may not be completely fun, but at least you can not hate it while you're doing it. And so that's one of the cool things about this. There are all these neat little different, unique things that they can find. So when I go to gallery view, that was list, this is gallery, I can see a lot more of the thumbnails. And then if I go to grid, instead of 40, it'll show me 105. So if you kind of have an idea of what you're looking for, that's a great way to do that by using these three. Or I can go up here and say, I only want films about Ellis Island. And it gives me, there was a list there, but I like this Library of Congress added little commercials at the beginning of the movies now. But this is a 1903 film, the Ellis Island Immigration Station. You can see I've got a title and then some notes, and a little bit, and it is an Edison. I was right. Film. But again, that's Adobe Flash. I do believe there's a way you can download it.
From the Library of Congress in Washington,
This is a
D.C.
commercial we had.
That's a real thing.
The real thing, right. He's like, yeah, and to explain to students, these aren't actors. This isn't a movie. These are real people arriving. And so as a language arts teacher, one of the things we always do is writing prompts to get students to want to write and want to, what questions you have, journaling and things like that. And so just to talk about, all right, let's look at some of these folks as they're getting off the ferry. Because they've come across, and now they're on the ferry coming into Ellis Island. And then once they get to Ellis Island, they go through this whole process of before they're even let off of Ellis Island. It's a fascinating thing. But we look at this and we see, okay, well, we see, all right, here comes this first dude just kind of prancing off.
So that ferry's running from the ship to the island?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
With all of their earthly possessions?
Exactly. Everything they could carry, right there. And so it's cool because I always say, all right, so let's look. This one we have a woman, a baby, and a kid, and there's a man. But then we go on, and this looks like, I don't know if this guy came with his family, but we have several women and little kids, all right? Where were the men? Where were the men probably? Probably already here. They came ahead of time to establish their homes and get jobs and their lives. And so these people are traveling. All these women and kids coming over, not really sure what they're coming to this new life. And then we see people with actual suitcases, but then we see other people carrying just bags. Some dressed very nice, others not. But to look at something like this that was actually created, and then to talk about why did somebody make this film?
Document history.
Is that what you, at the time, you think they were documenting history?
I don't
I
know.
mean, they did know it was a historic event. It was very important, but yeah. But the whole idea of why somebody made this film brings a whole new perspective to it. Was it somebody that was pro-immigration or anti-immigration? Was it a government official? We know it was Edison, somebody with Edison's group. What was the reason for creating it? And then what was the reason for saving it?
This has been a presentation from the Library of Congress.
If I had asked each of you to bring in a picture from a birthday party, one of your birthdays when you were little, you could bring that picture and I could look at it, I could see your smiling face right in the middle of that picture. I could learn something from that, but if I look at the other people in the picture, what's hanging on the walls, what's on the floor, what's on the table, all of those things, that's where I learn a lot more about you and who you are. I see your little brother or sister looking really mad because you got something for your birthday that they wanted or whatever, but that's how I learn about you, and that's what we're trying to teach students. Don't just look at what's in the middle that people want you to see. You have the ability to analyze and figure it out for yourself. So look deeper into a picture, into a movie, what you hear in audio, what you see on TV, anything like that. Everything is created for a reason. Whether it's a map, there's a reason that map was created. And so we want students to think about that when they're looking at primary sources. All right, so in that Ellis Island, you have all these different things. On the left, you can, oh, it's still in the film. You can look for a specific format, specific date, where it came from, who gave it, who contributed it, and more. So, and that's just from doing just a general search from the home page. So if you want to just see everything that's out there, that's a great place to start. All right. But sometimes that's not what we want. We know we want a newspaper. One of the coolest things that I discovered with newspapers is I was looking up, I'm just going to go at my 12 for now. I should have known that was the dates, that was dumb. But anyway, just to show you what it looks like. This is the Amarillo Daily News, October 23rd, 1912. Again, alright, I'm going to put in Eastern Illinois, normal, I can't remember if it's normal school or normal college. So I found 170 matches. If I only want front pages, I can click here. Get it. Now, it was really cool. One time I found where Eastern Illinois played football against Arcola, like Arcola High School or something like that. Apparently at one time they played high school teams. But you can zoom in. That actually is talking about, so they gave Andrew Carnegie, made a $50,000 gift to Aurora College in Illinois. But
You type in just Eastern Illinois University or something like that?
the only thing for Eastern Illinois University is a battle of the band. There's a band thing. Because see, this only covers 1836 to 1922. So they're adding more, but not a whole lot just yet.
Oh, we were still around around that time.
Yeah, that's when we were normal school or normal, we've changed our name a couple times. But, and if you, like I put in Mattoon, Illinois. This is the career trip 1898. And this is FC Hartford left on Thursday to visit friends and relatives in Mattoon, Illinois. But the real point of this is, see the clarity? How nice that is. So you can find an article and then go to the top of this page and clip it. And have that to print. So you can zoom in as much as you want. But so you can find these types of resources for your research, things that are a little bit obscure, a little bit different than what everybody else is going to have in their research. A unique perspective. I started to say in 1912 there was a blizzard or a big freeze that came through most of the United States. And so I started looking for stories about this, and I was finding how they were reporting on it and things like that. And one of the things that struck me, I found all these Chicago newspapers, and they were talking about what they were doing with the homeless. It had never occurred to me there were homeless people in 1912, just something I'd never even thought about before in my life. And so I was like, whoa. So then I started looking at that. And, I mean, it's kind of weird what they put in the newspaper in 1912, some of the stories. But that was a whole new, so then that got me researching something else, looking deeper. Another thing I found was the Honolulu Star had, the big headline was freeze in the mainland. And why is that significant in 1912? Because was Hawaii a state?
No.
Nope, Hawaii wasn't even in the part of the United States in 1912. So it's that finding diverse perspectives, how things are reported. Library of Congress is a whole other component they're doing with digital preservation on things like 9/11 and earthquakes and any major event. I'm sure they're doing things constantly with what's happening in our world, but they're saving tweets and newspaper articles, and then everything's being tagged, you know, by region of how it's being presented and discussed in different places.
So like 100 years
And it's
from now.
really neat, exactly. So, you know, just like when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, how it was reported was different in different places. Same thing with our modern events and how to look from these different perspectives. So that's one of the new things that they're working on. And so Chronicling America is very cool. It's the newspaper collection. Limited on your dates there, but it's still really good. Prints and photographs, pretty self-explanatory. Veterans history. This is where they actually have people who donate and send their primary sources or their resources, and they put them in. There's audio. This one has interviews, and then sometimes they're documents, personal things like that. But they've done a really cool thing down here by theme. Prisoners of war, sweethearts, buddies, and family ties, courage, patriotism, and community, so art of war, so all these different themes to help students understand that it was real. It's not just an event they have to memorize the dates for, but to understand what was happening. So that's what Veterans History Project is. And then film, maps, manuscripts. All right, just so we cover it because I'm going long, I apologize. But right here, we have okay, this is a brand new thing they have that screwed up all of my handouts. All right, this little bar, this is if you want to discover specific media type, they've kind of narrowed it down. Services, if you want a specific division within the Library of Congress, visit, you know, little promotion there. Education, this is what I spend most of my time working with. But it has things that are for K-12 classrooms, basically. A lot of lesson plans, very cool stuff like that. Science, everyday mysteries, but we're going to look at that in a minute. and a bunch of teacher stuff, and that's the majority of my day job, what I do. Right, and then connect and about. Alright. Right here in topics, they pick some key themes and topics: science, technology, and business. But again, a lot of things in the Library of Congress aren't inside any of these compartments. They're just there. You can go out and search. But if you look up, Niagara Falls is spelled like 3 different ways. Because if something's spelled wrong and it was cataloged that way, that's where it might be. So that's why we try to get students to learn as many synonyms and other terms that they can use as possible. But you can go in and, for example, National Child Labor Committee collection, it'll give you information about the arrangement and access, selected bibliography, how they digitized it, all that. Or let's look up coal. All right, 4,703 things within this collection for coal. So this one, we're going working in the coal mine. Jim's been there 4 months, helped push these heavily loaded cars. Appears to be about 12 or 13 in Coal Creek, Tennessee. Right here again, see JPEGs, the different formats, so you can use these. This is an amazing collection. If you ever do anything with labor laws or anything like that, this is an amazing collection. What Lewis Hine went in and like kind of secretly went in and took all these photographs and did these reports to stop the exploitation of these kids. It's awesome. But
Are they focusing on American stuff only or global?
primarily American. But if you go to that front page, there's world history and cultures. And in some of these, they link to resources from outside of the country. So other national libraries and national museums. They're very, very particular about who they link to and who they align with. They link to a couple of things on our website, and I'm so excited because they're super picky about any of that. But, you know, any of those resources that you look up, you can be pretty confident that it's a good resource. And so just because. Another kind of neat thing down here, places in the news. They go, and a lot of times they'll pull maps from different federal agencies. All right. Right here, science, technology, and business, I showed you that. Inventors, health and medicine, transportation, kind of grouped. Even cooler, right here especially for, if I go to researchers, science and technology. It's not pretty, but they're putting things together. Okay, so one of the things, they have a blog. It's actually really good. You can sign up for this, get updates. Upcoming lecture, Professor Wyman discusses terrorism in cyberspace. And a lot of these they actually will put up in webinar type things, so you can watch them after the fact. Giving you like the fast sneak peek at all this. All right. Research guides by subject within science, technology. Actually, these are all science, not technology. Yeah, but you can see it's just real diverse. We got a thing on Harley Davidsons. So, you know, it's just crazy. I was working with a lady at the Caterpillar Visitor Center, and did a search, and I found some very cool pictures of Caterpillar equipment doing different things. And so, yeah, it's that whole history of finding things like that. We've got NASA all the way down here. So, for students and teachers, one of the cool things they have, I want to show you that, especially for kids and families. These are things that are homework helpers for families and parents. Now, one of the new one, Everyday Mysteries, these are science questions. And so I can look up, put in plant, what is the smallest flower, what is the largest flower, and that's the one we have here on campus. The corpse flowers. Anybody been around it when it's done its thing? It smells really bad. So, but this is an example of, and it's weird, it like blooms really rarely, and I think it's bloomed like 3 times in the last 10 years or so here on campus. So something special going on over in that greenhouse. But breaks into these different topics. What is GPS? How does it work? And so you can see it's presented in a format that's easily understandable for students and families. You don't have to be a professional.
How often a website like this would be updated with the movement of technology and progress?
It just depends on what they have at the library. When they host events, or they acquire a new collection or something like that, then they'll add new components. But a lot of it's driven on just what's going on in our culture, and they'll add things as it becomes relevant. And so it's that's one of the things that's cool about, if you got here at the bottom, the ways to connect. You sign up for any of these blogs, or they're on Twitter and Facebook, all that good stuff. But again, the big thing is they're available for free. They're not the same old that everybody's seen. They're unique. They're different, and they're real people resources.
So how would you categorize, for example, the Google family and the Library of Congress and those other sources or databases that you see, scientific, the World Catalog and others that we have?
You know, one of the things that's really interesting I've discovered since I've been working with this program, it's kind of like schools and anything else. People are very territorial. And so if the Smithsonian has something, they want to keep it and don't share it with the Library of Congress or the National Archives or anybody else. So things are very compartmentalized. So definitely make sure that you search all. Like Smithsonian, of course, is going to have amazing science and technology resources. Yeah.
Does the Library of Congress hold genealogy records also? If I was going to do some genealogy?
Not really.
Not really?
No, they haven't really organized them in a way for that. So, I mean, you can go in and, like, one of the things I was interested in, my dad worked on the mail trains whenever he was younger. And so I just started doing a search and I didn't find anything on him, but I found history on it. But as far as finding anything specific, it's not a good place to go for that. If you know a name and know that there might be something there, it's worth it. One thing I did find, where I grew up in Du Bois in southern Illinois, a little bitty town, and just south of that, there's a town called Tamaroa. And I found when I was in DC one time, I was looking at a map and it didn't have Tamaroa, it had Coloma. I'm like, well, that's weird. And so after I saw that, I started looking, and in 1860, I can't remember exactly, I'm sorry, not Tamaroa, it was Du Bois, my town. It was, but it wasn't Du Bois, it was Coloma. In 1865, or no, before that, because Lincoln was alive, they changed the name of the town because there was already a Coloma apparently up in northern Illinois. And so they made us change the name of our town, probably because there were about 200 people then too. And But so you can find things like that. Also in Tamaroa, the town south, that was where one of the first Illinois Central Railroad leaders lived. And there were some interesting things about that and some legislation and that. But even if I like look up, well actually one thing that was cool, I looked up a railroad map of Illinois, and from our neck of the woods, I found, there's Galbraith now. Right. On this map, and they made these maps in the late 1800s because a lot of the guys couldn't read. And I could zoom in closer if I go, well actually Mr. Sims, that might be a whole program that's going to take forever. But they created these little pictures to help remember towns. And I live in Ashmore. In between Charles and Ashmore, it said there was a town called McPherson. Like, I've never heard of that. So at the time, Mary J. Courtney lived down the road from us, and she was still alive. She knew everything about this area. So I went to her and said, Miss Courtney, do you know what this is? It's where the racetrack is, where the giant Abraham Lincoln statue is, and Lincoln Springs was. That was a little town called McPherson.
McPherson?
McPherson. McPherson. And they would take, that was where they, it's not gonna do it, okay. Anyway, it's gonna, they would take cattle there. It's not operating right now. Anyway, it was a place, it was a little town where they picked up cattle to take it to East St. Louis to the stockyards. And that, so, it's fun to look. Gosh, I'm just not letting you zoom in. Usually you can zoom right in there. But anyway, right over here, and you know, so then I've used this with other communities, and they're like, oh yeah, there's that. And then I had some older people there, and they were talking about the trains and how the trains used to cross all over the state of Illinois. People would go from Terre Haute to St. Louis all the time, all of these things on the trains. So that led into a big discussion about transportation and changes in transportation and that. So it's just one thing leads to another. So it's not your one-stop place for anything. It really isn't. There's also something to offend everybody on here because language isn't cleaned up. So there's a lot of really harsh language. And there are articles and information that would not fly today, you wouldn't see published, but it's there. So more than anything, I just, wanted to show you that there's just this huge collection of resources for you at no charge to you that are very different than what most people use, and very cool things to use if you have to present, whether it's to other professionals in your field or students or anybody. It's a great resource to present your information in new ways. Now, if you are working on something, say a year from now, because the grant's getting refunded for another year, and that, but you can contact me. My website for the program is on the back of this, or it's just cwrich@eiu.edu. This is our website, right there. You can email me. A year from now, you're working on a presentation for something, send me an email. Say, hey, I'm going to be presenting this. Is there anything? Can you point me in the right direction? Looking for a map, are there any newspaper articles on, this or whatever? If you're doing anything, especially like medical or technology in that respect, there's some crazy medical stuff in old, census documents and that, the things they counted. So that's pretty cool stuff too. So anytime that you're working on something, don't just send me an email. Say you were in this class and you have a question, and I am more than happy to help you out in any way that I can. Right? I know this is a hell of a lot of information. information right here and that, but I just wanted to introduce it to you. If you have any questions about any of this, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I'm over in Buzzard Hall, so you can either swing by and see me over there, or just send me an email, or whatever works for you, and I'll be happy to talk with you.
If you have a minute or two, can you help us in the research? We were thinking of human trafficking. How can we go about these resources to start our work? Human trafficking.
Okay. Well, it's going to be early American information primarily. So, what other terms could we use?
We were starting from the broader concept, which worldwide, global, because the trade is going all over the place.
Right.
So
Actually, have any of you ever been to the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center in Skokie?
No.
Oh, good gosh. You guys need to go. It is amazing.
say it again, please. Say the name again.
The Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center.
Why in Skokie you have Holocaust?
It's a large concentration of Jewish Americans in Skokie.
Yep, and it is the third biggest in the world.
I have a cousin who lives in Skokie and I haven't even been there.
There you go.
I know.
The biggest is in Warsaw.
Uh,
The biggest. Then
And
the
there's
one in Washington
Washington,
D.C.
D.C.
and then this one. This one's been open less than 10 years. It's amazing. The building is set up. One side of the building is dark. The other side is light. You go in the dark side, and that's the stuff that makes you cry and that breaks your heart. But as you walk through, it starts talking about Darfur. Oh my God! Somebody help me. Say it. Darfur. Why can I not say that? Because I'm thinking about it too much. If I wouldn't have thought about it, I'd been fine. But they have amazing resources on genocide and modern day movements and what's going on. And it is amazing. So the first half is Holocaust, second half is moves into modern day and over the decades. And it blows you away. It really does. The Sudan and everything, I mean, just amazing, the resources and the items that they have. So, but, I mean, actually, okay, when I start typing, human trafficking comes up. 1,447, global legal monitor. Looks like this is primarily text. So these are web pages that have different geographic regions. You can see legislation, oral histories, some books.
Would it give us some statistics or some of the nature of these or something?
Some of the books might, legislation might. Like this is just a record for a book. So when you see one that looks catalog record, there's nothing digital there. So it's just telling you where to get, telling you about that book. But there we go. All right. This is from the Law Library of Congress. And it has news and events, webcast, legal research information that talks about human trafficking. I don't even know enough to try and bullshit you, so I'm not even going to pretend. Human trafficking in Minnesota, and that. So, but I mean, this is a perfect example of how I don't even know enough what to look for. But by looking at a site, then I can find other related terms and more information. Nothing is going to be easy on here. When I was doing my newspaper articles about the freeze in 1912, I literally spent 3 days reading old newspapers. It's not Google. But that's what makes it unique. That's why everybody doesn't use it. Because it takes some effort to find it. Luckily, I've been looking at it pretty much every day for the last decade. So I kind of know where some of the things are, obviously not this, but I can find a lot of the different resources. If you give me a few minutes, I can usually pinpoint things. And that, but again, it's just, they're just unique items that everybody doesn't use.
Does it add a value to your research if you have in your references Library of Congress name?
It does, but even more importantly is a piece of information within your research that everybody else hasn't used. That humanizes what you're researching. And it's humanizing it with a primary source, as opposed to a text that was written decades or centuries later. So it's nice to find a newspaper article about, and I'm curious, would they have called it human trafficking in the early 1900s?
I think that deals with more like labor laws, like child labor laws and things like
Well,
that.
there's a lot
It
of
would
it.
deal with that, probably the early 20s.
Because one of the things with that, I discovered how many
Yeah.
parents
What, yeah.
didn't work and sent their little kids to work in factories and that, while the parents
Yeah.
did nothing. And Lewis Hine, in his descriptions of his photos, would write, "Dad's a big, lazy, obnoxious guy that sits around the house all day while his kids go to work." I mean, he was pretty, put it out there and that. So that, and that's another reason people shy away from it, because you have to know what you're talking about to research on here. So again, it's not Google. And I will admit, I've gone to Wikipedia and read things and got names and dates, and then came to the Library of Congress because I didn't even know where to start. But once I got a little bit of information, then it snowballed, and on and on and on. So that's why I tell teachers, I tell everybody, play with it. Put in personal things that you're interested in. There's Coca-Cola advertising in here, a bunch of cool pictures of Wrigley Field. Just, you name it, there's stuff on here and that. And so just play with it, and once you get in there, it probably won't be what you're looking for, but you'll probably find something pretty cool. But yeah.
Did I hear you say earlier that there's census information in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, there's some old census and atlases and maps and things like that that are pretty neat. So, because I've looked up a lot and tried to find stuff with Ashmore, and there's a picture on the Embra that's in there and things like that. But, if you went to Chicago, there's a ton of stuff. But there's some things, believe it or not, in the rest of Illinois that you can find in there too. All right, any questions?
Any questions? Library of Congress.
All right, well, you guys, you know where to find me. If you need something, don't hesitate. I'm happy to help. All right.
Would you please join me in thanking our speaker?